This lecture is about the scientific method and methods of research. In here, we're going to take a look at why we need research and ultimately the different types of methods that we use to gather research as psychologists. Start with a little anagram. Take a look at this. If you're watching the video, just go ahead and pause it and try to figure out in less than a minute what that fourth anagram is. Give up? It's chaos. Now, why did I have that there? Well, it's because human beings think that we tend to think that we know more than we actually do. This causes us to overestimate. Most people, given those three anagrams already, say that they could solve that fourth one in under a minute. Yet for most people, it takes them much longer than a minute to get even just one of them done. Obviously, this is how we are overestimating our own abilities. Sometimes we think we know it all. This shows us that we need to have research. Research is the only way that we can make real conclusions about people, because otherwise it's just a guess. It's just kind of our feelings. We need to have the scientific attitude in order to conduct good research, though. And these are three characteristics that we need to have. The first is curiosity. If we're not curious about new ideas, we're never going to explore them. So we have to have that curiosity of wanting to figure out more. We also need to have skepticism. If we just accept fact as it is, then what's the point of research? We can just go on what's already been researched before or what's been proven before. Yet if we have skepticism, we may try to figure out things for ourselves. And probably most importantly, we need to have humility. This is the awareness of our own possibility of error. This makes us more open to new ideas. If we don't think that we can be wrong, then again, what's the point of experimenting? Why don't we just come up with answers? So we need to have those three parts for our scientific attitude. Whenever we conduct research, we need to use the scientific method. The scientific method is a step-by-step approach that allows us to carry out research in a logical manner. The first thing that we need to do is we need to have a theory. A theory is just an idea. So like the picture shows here, let's say there's a theory that says that those that have low self-esteem also have depression. That creates depression. Once we have that theory, we need to demonstrate how that theory can be measurable. This is when it becomes a hypothesis. If you take a look at part 2 in this picture, it says the example is that people with low self-esteem will score higher on a depression scale test. This is a measurable way. So if a participant records on a survey that they have low self-esteem and then they take a test that shows how much depression they have, this can confirm or reject our theory. And because it's measurable, it becomes a hypothesis. This is the actual research itself. Carry out tests of self-esteem and depression, and then we're going to either confirm our theory, which means that we got it right, reject it, which means we got it wrong, or in most cases, we're going to revise it, which means that we're going to have to change it somewhat and redo the experiment with our new theory. There are three primary ways that we can conduct research. The first is a survey. A survey asks a large number of questions to a large number of people to develop conclusions about those people's habits and about their opinions. There are a couple problems, though, with surveys. One problem with survey is that when we frame a question one way, we're going to get a response. Now, we may ask a similar question that in our minds may look at the exact same idea, but because it's worded or framed differently, you're going to get different responses. This means that when you can carry out surveys, it's really important to frame the questions in a way that is going to generate the best responses. Additionally, other problems with surveys include sampling. If you have not enough people, it's really hard to make conclusions about everybody. If you have only one type of people, like let's say 15-year-old girls, then you're not going to be able to make conclusions about all people just from your survey. So it's important to have a large sample, but also a diverse sample of different types of people, which makes it more likely that your conclusions from the survey are correct. Observation is another way that we can carry out research. There are some problems, however, with observation. Logistical problems could include not seeing your participants, and observation is where we literally watch our participants act in a normal behavior. Sometimes this is done in a lab setting, sometimes this is done in a natural setting. Some of the problems can include not seeing all of your participants, like if there's an obstructed views. One way around this is to have more than one observer. But if you do that, it's important to clearly define what you're looking for. Because let's say you're looking for happiness. One observer's definition of happiness might be different from another observer's definition from happiness. So it's important that we have a clearly defined set of things that we're looking for with observations. Additionally, we want to make sure we have more than one observer to eliminate any sort of obstructed views. But there's some other issues with observation. One includes the confirmation bias. This is the idea that we're looking for things that confirm our own beliefs. So if we believe that people are going to act a certain way, when we observe them, we may be more looking for those people who act that way and not the people who don't act that way. We may discount those people who act a certain way. Additionally, if the participants in our experiment know that we're watching them, they may act differently because they know that they're being watched. So they may not act naturally, which will then skew the data. Finally, observation is good for describing human behavior, but it does not explain it. Surveys can explain it. And our final one, case studies can explain it. But like the other two forms of research, a case study can also have its own problems as well. One of the strengths is that it's really revealing. It tells you why a certain person believes a certain thing and why they act a certain way. But it can also create problems too. And the biggest one is sampling. If you have a case study for one person, you can't make a conclusion about all people because every person is different. These are the three main case research methods. There are a few other research methods that we'll be covering later in the unit. But for the beginning of the unit, this is what we are covering. And I hope that this lecture was helpful.